Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? As the Council Advisory Committee, we will vote as a committee to either send business forward to the council meeting for ratification, return to staff for further information or review, or defeat the recommendation. I will remind members of council that we should continue to be mindful of our decision-making wheel to make balanced and respectful decisions while adhering to our code of conduct. The council, through policy, has adopted Robert's rules as our rules of order, our parliamentary procedure, and as the chair of the meeting, it is my responsibility to use those orders to ensure we get the business of the town done. I would request that all members of council put away their phones before the meeting begins. We will be voting by electronic means for all votes except administrative. Our queuing system cannot be used due to social distancing. If you wish to speak on a matter, please raise your hand and you will be called upon in order. Please speak clearly as we are depending on the microphone at the front of the room. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before this meeting commences? CEO Trope, could you please take the roll call?
Mayor Snow, all of council is present and accounted for this evening.
Thank you. CEO, we have been provided with a proposed agenda. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, Mayor Snow. First, one of our presenters tonight, Crystal's house, cannot make it. So we would be leading item 4B from the agenda.
Thank you.
And I've also had 2 items that have come in with regards to land matters. So I would suggest that we would go in camera for 10A and 10B, both would be land matters.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any further additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor. So I'd like to add on the agenda with relation to the CBC article today. There are accusations in there, and I was speaking with Pam Berman, and the sources cited are staff. So I think this is important that we finally address these. They've been it's been 2 months now, and there's been no conversation. And I guess if the time is right, I'd like to ask you, are they true or are they not true? The allegations specifically against you.
Councillor, are you asking to discuss staff at this agenda?
I don't want to discuss staff. I want to discuss you because you're accountable to the public. This is not about staff. Are the allegations against you true or are they not true? And if they're not true, then are you saying that staff fabricated that letter? I guess the public wants to know, I want to know, we all want to know if it's true or not. And I think the staff deserves some acknowledgement. And just before you've spoken to the CBC and you spoke to the advertiser back in July, but you've never addressed council or the public, the citizens of Kentville, and I think that's paramount now. So that's my question for you, if you can answer it. Thank you.
We are looking at additions or deletions to the agenda.
So if you want to answer it later on, then.
Are you asking to add something with regards to staff?
Yes.
Anything with regards to staff or HR must be held on an in-camera.
Right, but it's not staff. You're not staff though. You're an elected official like all of us around this horseshoe. So
Yes.
You're accountable to the people outside, just as I am and the rest of us are. So the question is being asked to you. I'm not asking staff.
Okay, are you putting an item on the agenda? Are you requesting
Well,
an item on the agenda?
I would like to. I feel that I don't feel that anyone's going to support that here for whatever reason. And so I'm asking you, maybe you can answer the question yourself and just clear it up for all of us, for Kentville.
Councillor, like every single person around this horseshoe, I am accountable every 4 years. We have fixed election dates. So thank you.
But
That
there's
is my
accusations
response.
there though that are.
You know very well that those accusations will lead to a legal.
So they are true then. I guess that's what you're saying. If they're not, this is what I'm going to say to the world watching. If everything was handled properly and nothing happened, where's the fear? That's my question. And if nobody wants to chime in and correct this now, if this toxic environment has not only seeped into staff, it's around this room.
CEO,
Thank you.
Could you speak to the
Sure. I
matter,
think it's
please?
first, the only comment I can make necessarily around this is taking agenda items. So at this moment in time, if there's an item being added to the agenda, council gets to vote on that item if that item is going to proceed forward. The only other thing with specifics, and I understand depending on how this would word, we would then have to have a conversation around how that agenda item would be put forward. So if there's a specific item being addressed to the councilor's question, or comment, yes, council has to vote on whether that item is going to find its way on the agenda.
Thank you. So do you wish to put staff
Yes.
for an in-camera?
No, I don't want it, it's not staff, but the allegations are against you, Mayor, so I've been trying to say that since July.
So you
There-
wish to speak about a legal matter?
No, I want to speak up, I'm asking you if they're true or not, that's all I'm asking you, to address the citizens of Kentville. I don't, we've seen the allegations, they were written twice, they were presented to you last year from the staff, who are not your staff. They're not our staff. We have one staff person, and he's sitting right there, CEO Troll.
CEO, please.
So I guess just, Counselor, just to try and maybe get to the nub of this. If there's a specific motion you would like to make or a specific agenda item, then it gives us the opportunity to have that discussion. And I understand where you're trying to
Thank
go,
you. Mhm.
but I think you need to try and articulate this so council can determine if it's going to make it to the agenda or not.
Well, I guess CEO Troll and the rest of you, I don't know what other language to say it in, because we sat here 2 months ago and I asked the same question. And we got the, so I'm just wondering, and that's why I'm pleading with you now, if you want to take it upon yourself to address it yourself. At some point, rather than, there shouldn't have to be a vote on whether you want to speak up and say they're true or they're not.
Counselor, this is a legal matter.
But you are not, but you're
bound.
not staff, this is not a personnel matter for you. You're accountable to everybody watching, everybody at home, and everybody who voted the first time for you. You were acclaimed this time, Mayor, but everybody at home, that's who we're accountable to. We're not doing our job. If we're gonna brush this under the rug again.
We could, sorry, and I know if Jeff were here, this would be the comment that he would make. He said, we're setting the agenda, this is not the debate time. And so we need to get past an agenda or nothing's going to happen. So I think I guess if you have a specific item you would like to put forward, then we can have that conversation if council chooses to have it. But asking a question during the agenda is not going to move it ahead. We're going to be caught in a loop. So
You don't want to, you're not going to answer the question
This just
unless
really-
there's an item on the agenda and it's voted upon by my peers here.
the way in, sorry,
No, go ahead, please.
so the way in which, and otherwise, in order to get to a point to have a debate, it has to make its way on the agenda. I'm sorry,
Right.
Councillor.
Because I need support of the council here.
Right, and so I mean, that is essentially the way that under Robert's rules, that's how this would work. So if you have something that you would like to put on the agenda, it's, you don't debate it before the agenda, you actually put it on the agenda.
Oh, I understand the rules. It's just that it's not going to be debatable because, we'll go again. I mean, let's make a motion that we discuss the allegations directed at the mayor, nothing to do with staff. It's related to Mayor Snow. That's my motion. I think, and like I said before I stop here, I think that we owe it to the citizens of Kentville, and we definitely owe it to the people in this building. They work here. This is their livelihood. Some of them been here 4 or 5 times with different mayors and councils, and we're just little blips in their careers. So I think it's important that it's finally addressed. It was tucked away 1.5 years ago, and we can sit here and say it wasn't, but it was. And anybody that was on this council before knows it. Whether you want to say it or not, that's up to you. But we know it. As a taxpayer, I know it. And I pay one pile of taxes in Kentville, and I'm not pushing it under again. So I'll leave it with you.
If so, if I could, is the agenda item you want to discuss allegations against the mayor?
Yes,
That's what you want to have
yes,
the agenda item.
right. Thank you.
Council, we have a request to discuss an item under business, old business, I guess. So that is item 6. And I would ask for your say, Deputy Mayor.
Do you not have to have the motion seconded, your worship?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so we have a motion. If we could have it seconded. Councilor Maxwell, thank you. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, I'll say you.
No.
Councilor Gerard?
Might I ask a question, your worship, or
Certainly, go ahead.
will Councillor Zabian be providing names, dates, and times for the allegations? Of the instances, or
You know what, Councillor Dredd, you were here last year, so you should know that already. You were privy to all that last year. You were on the council. I
Through
wasn't.
the chair, please.
Yes,
Thank you.
He was privy last year through, so he should know the answers to those questions. Thank you.
All right, so you have no access to, he has no access to dates and times.
Okay, no,
Counselor Maxwell?
Yes.
Counselor Huntley?
No.
Counselor York?
Yes.
Counselor Zavian?
Yes.
And I say no. So the item does not go on the agenda. Are there any further items to add or delete from this evening's agenda? There being none, I would call for a motion to accept the additions and deletions as stated.
So moved.
Thank you. The seconder? Thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed, the motion is carried. All right, the minutes of the July 12th, 2021 CAC meeting have been distributed for approval. Are there any changes to these minutes? If not, they are approved as distributed. If yes, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes and they will be added to the electronic meeting file as approved. No changes? All right, moving on. We have a presentation this evening from Valley Community Learning Association, and Peter Gillis is here to make that presentation. Peter, the floor is yours. And you have 10 minutes, but I think you can probably have another 10 if you need them.
Yeah, I was, can you hear me okay? Okay. So I was asked just to provide a little update on the purchase of the property at 118 Oakdale, the former Christian Reformed Church. So some of you remember me from presentation or other things last summer. So we were able to purchase the building and on May the 14th, and we've been moving some of our adult learning programs up there. As you know, maybe don't know that we do adult education, so GED, English as an additional language, and employability programs, youth programming. Some of our programs remain downtown at 49 Cornwallis at the Artery property, but we've moved a number of them up to OT. And I don't know if anybody's wandered the ground, but we've made quite some changes. I think I'm always very proud to bring people around and show what we've been able to do up there. So there's a community garden with a couple of greenhouses and some community beds that are available to anyone in the community, and there's a little kitchen garden as well. We have a couple of women who are operating a commercial kitchen, which we got certified shortly after we purchased the building. So Megan and Jenny Osborne used to run the Union Street Cafe in Berwick for many years, and they're working in the kitchen there and supporting learners who are interested in culinary and food prep in some one way or the other. So we have some folks from newcomers to our area, as well as people who've been here for many years who are interested in learning more about where the food comes from and how they can prepare it either at home or as a career opportunity. So it's Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays is when Megan and Jenny are there. So if you ever wanted to come up, it'd be a really good time. So a very nice meal, and we share it with whoever comes in the building. So it's a nice time to come see what we're doing. Any of those things that we do, whether in the kitchen or outside, are really vehicles for our folks to gain some experience so they can move along in their career. So our work is primarily to provide education credentials for people or improve their English, but increasingly most of the people come to us do so because they want to get a job. And so there are jobs in the food service industry and in the farming sector, and we'd like to fill those jobs if we could with some of the people who come through our building. So that's kind of our mission. Today we were meeting with Michael Howell at the Bower about how we might connect up with some of the work they're doing in Wolfville as well, and have a solid connection between our various programs and areas. We had some changes we'd like to make in the building. I talked to Bev and Kirsten about those, and we have a permit that's been approved to make our washrooms more accessible. They were accessible when they were built in 1991, but the doorways are a little small, and there's some little things we need to do that way. And we need to put a roof on the The newer building, actually, the older building has a steel roof, and we'll be adding a steel roof to the newer part of the building, which is 1991 or so. Got a few little leaks there, which is one of the great joys of home ownership. Put buckets around the place. But we had some plastic up on that side of the building on the weekend, so we need to get that steel roof on before the end of this semester. So town staff have been very supportive in terms of letters of support for various grants that we've applied to. So we're very appreciative of the letters that have come in to support our work. So there's other things we'd like to do. We're just getting started. Excited and appreciate the town's support here around this table as well as staff. Didn't have time to prepare a beautiful presentation with photographs. So Jennifer said sometimes people are more attentive if you don't. I know, did it work or not? We're always welcoming people to come up to look, have any do anytime, just to show you around. Just give me an emails and when you'd like to come, happy to do that. Yeah, I don't know. Are there any questions for anybody about what we're trying to do? Yes.
Thank you, Peter. I'm just wondering how many folks you have with you now, and is there a waiting list, or what does that sort of look like?
So this week, teaching staff just came back last week, so we're sort of in the process of developing all the classrooms. And in a typical year, we have about 150 students, but we're also in Annapolis County as well. So last year, there were 65 newcomers in our immigration program. So the balance of the students would be in our literacy or GED program. There are wait lists for some things. For example, a fellow called today looking for trucking. We don't take people out of trucks, but we do prepare them for the written test and the air brake. So we had a couple of calls on that this week and last. So that's the kind of class there is a wait list on, because we don't have a ready-made. There isn't enough demand to do that all the time, but when we have enough people, we put one of those on. Typically, you can get into a GED class right away. And grading class, get matched with a tutor, or get an English class. There's no wait list for those typically. There are variations.
I saw that NSCC is offering GED for free. I didn't know if they were doing any work with you at all.
So I know they were advertising. What they don't actually offer the GED. So we do the GED prep.
Okay.
They have a test center on site.
Okay.
They offer the adult learning program where you get your grades up. And I know it sounds like, well, which is which? And many of our listeners ask the same question. So the adult learning program they offer, we do prepare people to go into that when they're ready. So it's like getting your high school if you didn't get it. So when you sit in a class, the curriculum is designed for adults, but you sit in a class like you would if you were in high school, put in the same time, get the credits. The GED is basically just a test. So it prepares you to all the critical writing skills and math skills, whatever. But when you go, you either get it or you don't go and write a high pressure test, and you have your credential, which is called an equivalency, which for most things in life is good enough to get a job or go on to post-secondary. There are some exceptions. So they do like high school. We prepare for that, but we do the GED for. GED is great for people who are working and may not have, or they have a family. There's a reason why it would take too long for them to get through a whole high school again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Peter,
Yeah.
the work you're doing with the folks in the kitchen, will those people be available or ready to go out on the economy? I'm just thinking, we had a meeting last week and one of our members couldn't come because he has 3 restaurants in Middleton, and one of his people called in sick and he had to go to work. So will these folks be ready to go in and work in restaurant settings?
That's definitely the hope. I mean, people have different goals. So there was a woman from Syria, and her goal, I'm not really sure if she has a career goal yet, and she has some family responsibilities, and she would like to share a bit of what she knows, and in the process she gathers hours that she can use as a credit towards her high school diploma through a co-op program. So I don't know how soon she will do that.
Mhm.
I have another gentleman, he and his wife are originally from Jamaica, and they want to barbecue chicken. Well, they actually started, and they use our commercial kitchen to prepare the food, and then they go to the Harvard market. So that's, he has another job that he does full. This is what he does on the weekend. I don't think he's gonna work in the kitchen in Berwick necessarily.
Right.
But there are people who are less sure of what they want to do, and I think it's an opportunity to just see if they like it in there. And,
Yeah.
it could be a stepping stone. I know there are lots of jobs available, it seems right now.
Right.
People are really trying for employees, so we want to give them a really positive experience in a kitchen environment, and maybe people who haven't thought of that before might consider that as an option.
Right.
But that definitely would be great to see those kind of.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for your presentation.
sure.
With Jenny involved with the gardens, I know there's probably some chat perhaps around partnering with schools and school cafeterias about like a farm to school or farm to cafeteria program. Have you looked into that at all? Are schools able to apply to come and do a farm to school experience?
It's a really good idea. Now, I haven't talked with Jim about that, but I know a little bit about that. So I'm really surprised that. Definitely be open to something.
Great. This is what I assume you should check.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I need is another.
Kathy.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Peter. I've told you this before, face to face, but I'd like to publicly say how pleased the residents are in that area to have your organization running such a program up there. And I think it's something that, is well needed in our area, not just the town of Kentville, but it certainly is something that we've needed for a long time. And the residents are just ecstatic about it, especially since they were led to believe there was no possible use of it in what was being presented at the time. So they are very pleased with that. So thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there, hopefully some will come over. I've only heard from one resident actually, and he wanted me to mow more of the teeth next to the street. You know, the mowing part of your lawn. There's 3 stumps there. You're supposed to come over. But he's very nice. Hopefully we'll have more people come over. And maybe share in the community. That's what we're setting up.
So, Peter, when can we see the next literacy mile?
Hmm.
Not to put you on the spot or anything, but,
Well, I have a board meeting tomorrow. I know that's one of the things we're going to talk about,
okay,
along with how we're dealing with the COVID world we're in.
right.
It's been a bit of a stressful thing, I'm sure it's everywhere, right? Dealing with phase 5. But yeah, someone else asked me that question today. I'm not really sure, but I expect we'll be trying to do it in May. We'll
Okay.
probably do it.
Okay,
Lots
perfect,
of space.
perfect. All right, well, if there's no further questions, I want to thank you very much on behalf of council for coming in this evening and making this presentation. And anytime you want to come and tell us some good news stories, we're here, and truly appreciate your time and everything that you do for Kentville and for the people in our wider community.
Thank you for
Thank you.
listening. And, happy to come back again, and again, you're welcome to come up. Anytime. All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the directors have provided their reports for your review and are present if there are questions. We will accept all reports into record at the end, other than specific motions. And CAO Troke, if you could please introduce our department reports and recommendations.
Sure. So tonight we're going to be starting with finance and Director Kroll.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. It's great to be here to start fall winter season. I'm reporting firstly in the finance department on the month ended August 1st, 2021. I hope you've had a chance to read the report. I'm not going to read it to you verbatim. I'm going to just skim a few highlights. We have on the first page some highlights from the finance department. You can read that as well as what the finance department has been up to over the past summer. As far as the turning our eyes to the town council operating fund, the benchmark would be 42% of everything was average even year over the year. We're looking at taxes reporting at 80.3%. It's certainly over the benchmark, and this is mainly due to a couple of things. One, taxes, total taxation. The final tax levy has been issued. The due date on, I'll say this a couple of times, is October the 1st this year, because of the new holiday, for the new federal date that we will be not in the office. The final tax levy, as I said, is due October 1st, and I just want you to know that. We're looking at taxation reporting at 100.9%. Payments in lieu of tax for the federal and provincial government, both of those payments in lieu of tax have been applied for. The federal government has indicated that we will receive their funding before the end of September, and there is no indication from the province when we receive the provincial PILT. Related to the finance and transfers revenue, it's reporting at 100% as all budgeted transfers from the reserves have been transacted. On the expenditure side of the ledger, we're looking at being slightly over the guideline at 44.7%. Public transit exceeds benchmark that reflects 2 quarterly invoices for that service. Also, the 21-22 payment has been made to Kings Point. Environmental development, planning and zoning office expenditures exceeds the yardstick due to payment of insurance deductible. And financing and transfers expenditures, debt charges, principal exceeds benchmark that reflects the debt repayment schedule. Regarding the summary of outstanding taxes, which is Schedule C, the final tax levy was released in August, as I mentioned before. The current tax levy outstanding August 31st is $4,666,726, which means 52.3% of the current levy has been collected. Total property tax outstanding at August 31st in total, this includes arrears, is $4,674,449, and this equates to 52.6% collected in total. And it is above last year's figure of 49.7%. Sanitary sewer area service is now reporting for the first quarter ended June 30th, 2021. This is Schedule D. This would be a 25% benchmark if everything is averaged at the end of the year. Revenue for the sanitary sewer area service falls short of benchmark at 22.7%. We have the first quarter reporting for residential billings along with 3 months industrial charges. On the expenditure side of the ledger is below the threshold at 22.5%. Pumping station section exceeds the benchmark due to the annual insurance premium payment. And fiscal services is reporting at 96.9%, but it accurately reflects the debt repayment schedule. All other segments in the sanitary sewer area service are falling under the benchmark. And it is reporting a current operating surplus at June 30th, 2021 of $3,232. Turning our eyes now to Schedules E and F, that's a professional investment fund. The investment advisory committee met virtually on September the 8th to discuss the report for August 31st. The statement of financial position Schedule C, Schedule E. For August shows that investments total 13.4 million at cost, and market values there at 14.4 million. The statement of reserves, which is Schedule F, indicates that interest paid into the fund is $32,653. Dividends paid into the fund total $81,600. Capital losses this year to date, $8,185. You can see compared to the year for last year. And at August the 31st, management fees total $15,508. Schedule G is the capital acquisition fund, the capital investment plan for 2021 from the town of Kentville. The budget is up 2.3 million. And at the date of writing, we have expended $439,475 or 19.3%. And you can see all the details in the schedules that follow behind the main. That's our report from the finance department.
Excellent. Thank you, Director. Are there any questions for the Director on this report? None? All right, moving on to the business.
Thank you very much. We're looking at the temporary borrowing resolution for the town of Kentville capital acquisition program for the year 21-22. I've attached the temporary borrowing resolution that was forwarded from the Department of Municipal Affairs, and it relates to the town's 2021-2022 capital program. This resolution requires council's authorization before it's forwarded to the Minister for the Department of Municipal Affairs for ministerial consent. Once all the approvals are in place, funds can be drawn down as required on a temporary basis to finance our 21-22 capital acquisition. So my recommendation is that I recommend the Council Advisory Committee that it authorizes the temporary borrowing resolution noted below and then forwards this resolution to the next meeting of Town Council for ratification. Following this event, the document will be sent to the Minister of the Department of Municipal Affairs for provincial authorization. And we're looking at TBR 21/22-pound for various purposes, capital projects. The amount is $1,064,100. And on the second page of the temporary borrowing resolution, you'll find Schedule A that denotes all of the infrastructure we intend to build by long-term borrowing, and it matches our capital budget.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Director Kroll. So if we take that recommendation and it becomes a motion, the Council Advisory Committee recommends approval to Town Council of the attached temporary borrowing resolution to borrow under TBR 21-22 Town $1,064,100 for various purpose capital projects at the September 27, 2021 meeting. Someone could move that, please. So moved. Thank you. And a seconder, Councilor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends approval to Town Council of the attached temporary borrowing resolution to borrow under TBR 21-22 Town $1,064,100 for various purpose capital projects at the September 27, 2021 meeting. Is there any discussion on this matter? If there's no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends approval to Town Council of the attached temporary borrowing resolution to borrow under TBR 21-22 Town $1,064,100 for various purpose capital projects at the September 27, 2021 meeting.
Dan, get you to turn the thank you.
To your right, I think. Is there a remote up there?
Sorry about that.
That's me.
This one's on.
Yep, this is on. There it is. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. Director?
Yes, thank you very much. My next report is related to the temporary borrowing resolution for the sanitary sewer area service for capital acquisitions for the year 21-22. Similar to what I mentioned before, this temporary borrowing resolution was issued by the Department of Municipal Affairs and relates to the sanitary sewer area services 21-22 capital program. It requires council's authorization before it is forwarded to the minister for his consent. Once the approvals are in place, funds can be drawn down on a temporary basis to finance the 21-22 capital acquisition for the sanitary sewer area service. And therefore, my recommendation is that I recommend the Council Advisory Committee that it authorizes the temporary borrowing resolution noted below and then forwards the resolution to the next meeting of Town Council for ratification. Following this event, the document will be sent to the Minister for the Department of Municipal Affairs for provincial authorization. And this is TBR 21/22, purposes sanitary sewer Burke subdivision. The amount is $235,000.
Thank you, Director, for that recommendation. Becoming a motion, the Council Advisory Committee recommends approval to Town Council of the attached temporary borrowing resolution to borrow under TBR 21-22 sanitary sewer Burke subdivision $235,000 for sanitary sewer capital project at the September 27, 2021 meeting. Can you move that, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconder, thank you, Councillor York. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to Town Council of the attached temporary borrowing resolution to borrow under TBR 21-22 sanitary sewer Burke subdivision $235,000 for sanitary sewer Burke subdivision capital project at the September 27, 2021 meeting. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends approval to Town Council of the attached temporary borrowing resolution to borrow under TBR 2122 Sanitary Sewer Burke Subdivision, $235,000 for sanitary sewer in Burke Subdivision Capital Project at the September 27th, 2021 council meeting. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. And Director?
Yes, thank you. My last piece of business relates to the Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority Guarantee Resolution. The Valley Waste requires the town to authorize the attached guarantee resolution to support its Valley Waste temporary borrowing resolution for its approved 21-22 capital program. The guarantee resolution for Kentville is in the amount of $95,550 or 10.05%. Once authorized, 2 originals signed, dated, and sealed must be returned to Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority for it to complete the required paperwork. You will also find for your information the attached temporary borrowing resolution passed by Valley Waste Resource Management Authority Board on July 21st, 2021, along with Schedule A, which cites municipal partners breakdowns, and Schedule B, which cites the approved 21-22 capital program for Valley Waste. My recommendation reads that I recommend to Council Advisory Committee that it authorize the attached guarantee resolution, which denotes the town's percentage share of Valley Waste's 21-22 capital investment plan. I ask this matter is placed on the next docket of Town Council. Once ratified, 2 copies signed, dated, and sealed are to be sent to Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority for it to complete the necessary paperwork. And we're looking at guarantee resolution for Valley Region Solid Waste. Guarantee amount is $95,500, $550.
Thank you for that recommendation, Director, and turning it into a motion for council. The Council Advisory Committee recommends approval to Town Council of the attached guarantee resolution for Kentville to support the Valley Waste temporary borrowing resolution for its approved 2021-2022 capital program. Kentville's share of the TBR is 10.05% or $95,550 at the September 27, 2021 meeting.
So
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends approval to Town Council of the attached guarantee resolution for Kentville to support the Valley Waste temporary borrowing resolution for its approved 2021-22 capital program. Kentville's share of the TBR is 10.05% or $95,550 at the September 27, 2021 meeting. Is there any discussion on this matter? The question is that CAC recommends approval to Town Council of the attached guarantee resolution for Kentville to support the Valley Waste temporary borrowing resolution for its approved 2021-22 capital program. Kentville's share of the TBR is 10.05% or $95,550 at the September 27, 2021 meeting. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Director Kroll, and thank you for coming in on a day's vacation.
It wasn't much of a vacation, I'm just moving wood.
Well, I figured, but you still had to come in.
I'm standing up.
All right, good for you. All right, moving on to our planning and development, please.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Hope everybody had a wonderful holiday or summer. Just touching on the highlights, we issued 25 permits with the building valuation of $1.5 million. And that brings us to a calendar year total of $22.3 million worth of development within the town. As you can see, as you drive around town, Ryan's Park is starting to come about. The townhouses are under construction, and Myers Landing is on their fourth and last building being constructed. A reminder of a public hearing for Wednesday night, September 15th at 6 p.m. to gather input on council's amendments to the MPS and LUD relating to some housekeeping items that have we've been talking about, as well as making some changes to the C2 zone to allow multifamily residential and assisted living with ground floor commercial components. Business park, we've got a couple of lots left in the business park, but I think we may be talking about some of that later on at the end of the meeting. Some interest in those parcels will be coming forward to you. We found out at the end of last week that we won the appeal for the decision from the Marshlands Commission Secretary. We won the appeal to have the dog park. So we've now been given permission to be able to open or build a dog park, subject to a couple of small minor conditions. Kirsten Duncan has been accepted to take the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification course for the town. So she'll be our first designated RHFAC professional for the town. So we're very excited for her on that. And staff have been working on a couple of land use bylaw amendments that will be coming forward to council over the next few months. And also looking at a couple of site plan applications. One is for a new car dealership and the other is for a townhouse development on the road. So that's my report.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions for the Director? Councillor York, please.
Just want to pass along my congratulations to Kirsten and to thank her for the work she put in on that dog park file. I think that's probably unexpected, but much appreciated.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, gentlemen. As you are aware, I know, there's infilling taking place in Burke subdivision. And I know that you and Director Bell have received an email from a resident up there. And they're concerned, well, they have one person right, but they're not happy right now and are concerned about truck traffic, noise and unsightly fill. So first of all, I've been asked to pass along to Director Bell how overall pleased the residents are up there for the work that is being done, how happy they are with the company that's doing the work, how accommodating they are, and that this in no way has a reflection on that work. And for getting back to them, because I know you replied today as well. But I heard from them today, and there are a couple of other questions, and I think you might be the best person for me to ask these to. As far as you know, is there an end date for this infilling process that's going on?
No. No end date that we know. We don't even have, there's no permit to be issued for something like that. People can bring fill in and fill in their property. Department of Environment has been out there to look at what's going into the ground. We have yet to find out what the findings are on that.
Okay, good. And general question, why are trucks from half-ton to commercial dump trucks allowed to do unlimited and multiple trips a day in a residential area? They have counted up to 5 loads a day going in there, and wanted me to stress upon that council and so on that this is not an industrial park or a commercial area, it's a residential area. And so they just kind of want to know why those trucks are being allowed to roll in there.
So these trucks that are going to fill into this particular property, it's the first time I've heard about that, but I think trucks on town street fall under the traffic authority. But obviously, yeah, there may be something that we look into to find out what they're putting down there and how much, but we really don't have a bylaw or a mechanism to keep people from filling in, relatively clean. Yeah, because it is a lot that is a very steep back area.
And there's probably going to be other places in town at some point that are going to experience erosion, maybe similar to that. And so my question, because those other two are from residents, is it time that we might look at developing a bylaw to cover this type of activity going on in residential areas?
Certainly give it some thought, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's going to be a difficulty in terms of hours of operation, something that you might want to have to address in the bylaw. But if you had a fairly large lot, and this lot is fairly large, and had needed a lot of fill, and how do you really control the number of trucks? You really, if it's a permitted use and a permitted option to be able to fill in your lot, maybe it's hours of operations that you need to address in the bylaw to keep that kind of activity to a point that it doesn't become destructive in the neighborhood.
So can we refer that question about the number of trucks and the type of trucks to the traffic authority to take a look at, maybe? Is that possible?
We can have a discussion.
Yeah,
We'll talk about it to senior staff.
okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Those
you're
are just questions they want me to ask.
CAO is taking notes, Council Maxwell as well.
Yeah, thank you. The CAO needs more information. I'll answer questions.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for the director? None? Thank you very much. I guess we will see you Wednesday night, September
Wednesday night.
15th.
And just an FYI, it's also being held via Zoom because at the time that we had to schedule it and put the information into the newspaper, we didn't know where we were going to be on the 15th.
Right.
So it'll be set up the same way as we had it, very first public hearing that we held via Zoom, and it went really, really well. And people have an opportunity to call in from there. So, yeah.
All right, perfect. And just a reminder to council that if you're not part of this meeting, then you cannot vote when it comes before council.
Right. So I understand that you're going to be away at the end of the month.
That's correct.
For council, so that'll
Yes.
be one less person there. So we need a majority of council, of the entire council, but so we also need a majority of those that have attended the public hearing. So hopefully you can all make it.
Right. Thank you, Director. All right, moving right along to Parks and Recreation. And what a summer it's been.
Pleasant. Good evening, council. I hope everyone had a great summer. You see at the beginning of my report, I just threw in some summer stats, just so you can have a quick snapshot of what our summer was like. We had 251 kids attend camp, 112 kids attend swimming lessons. We raised a total of $873.45 for the spike fund, but we gave out $1,237.99 for support in order to attend camp and swimming lessons and other things. 32 youth went to our LIT program. 15 summer staff were hired to make summer happen. 8 summer park staff were hired to keep our green spaces looking great. 170 swims happened, 10 pop-up plays, 8 summer concerts, 20 girls attended, girls on boards, and a partridge in a pear tree. It was an excellent summer, and I commend all staff, all summer staff for working their tush off to make it great. So thanks for all counselors that supported us throughout the summer. Moving on to facilities, our pool opened after having a hiatus last year in 2020. 2021, we were able to open. It looked a little bit different because, of course, we were still under COVID restrictions, so we still had to cap our public swims at a certain number. And unfortunately, it also meant that our change rooms were off limits. So if you did need to use the washroom, then it's not very able to let you in there. Our splash pad took a hit. Yep. It opened for a full week and it was a glorious week. It was really great that week. And then some stuff happened underground and we're still looking into it. And you will hear more about that later on once we figure out the full gamut of what's going on there. That was a bit of a struggle. Our tennis and pickleball courts were in full swing. I have to commend and give a shout out to the volunteers who ran our pickleball and tennis courts this summer. We have 2 exceptional volunteers who also went in and cleaned up the entire clubhouse for us and did their own, along with our staff, did their own little additions to it. So that was really great. And tennis picked up, especially women's tennis, for anybody who wants to get into it. Under programs and programs and operations, I do need to give a shout out to our summer recreation coordinator, Catherine Waterbury. Every summer we hire a right-hand person in that department who essentially makes summer happen. This summer was Catherine. You know her because she's been at Kentville before. She worked for us for 110 years and she just lives and breathes and leads Kentville. So thank you, Catherine, for all that you did. Our LIT program, which was launched this summer, was quite successful. We had a lot of learnings and a lot of things that we're going to do the same and a few things that we're going to adjust. But overall, we received great feedback and it was a really great connection with some of the youth who struggled to get to. And now we have a full gamut of people who
ideally we'll get into recreation. Great. Our department also launched our Breakfast in the Park program this summer. This was something, a way for us to connect and kind of talk about issues like food insecurity in our community, but also as a way to check and see how our community is doing in general. And we learned a lot from them. One, that they want to keep those going because they want to, folks really enjoy connecting with other people in their community. Some folks showed up because they were generally hungry and they needed some food to eat. And it was also a chance for us to connect providing other services in our community and also explain all of the great things that are happening in our parks and facilities within recreation in general. Under capital projects, Director Delman already talked to you about the dog park, so that's great. Our skate park bowl, if you haven't been down there to see and stand at the lip of the bowl and just imagine being on wheels, I encourage you to do so. It's fantastic, getting great feedback. The last piece to do there is laying the sod and doing some of the grounds work there. And then the Pca Playground piece, which we've been waiting forever to be completed, was done in time for schools to start. So that's really exciting. I haven't checked in with the students to see how they like it. My kids really liked it. I almost got sick watching them on it, but it seems really one of those silly ones. Yeah. Under community events, we were able to hold a community event this summer, which is really great, and that was Open Days. And Rotary played a big part of that. So thanks to everyone who from the Rotary who volunteered with that, hosting a free barbecue. We were able to have music, a soap slide, which was really fantastic and was popular this summer. All the summer staff were there and had different. There was an open art gallery. There was obstacle courses. There was everything. And then following that, we actually had a special event for summer staff to say thank you. So thanks to everyone who attended that. And then speaking of events, I also want to put on your radar that we are planning for Harvest Fest, which is another good thing. Both Lindsay and Ashley are looking forward to that right now. Under council related priorities, green infrastructure grant. So we've created an internal committee within town hall staff that is working through all of those projects to make sure that we're jumping on any opportunities that align with those and dotting all of our I's and crossing our T's. Currently, we are in the middle of an Aboriginal engagement as per required through the various levels of government. And so this is why we haven't seen a lot of movement on that. We are to wait until that is complete before we're able to move forward, just to make sure that everyone has a chance to have their voices heard. Under the accessibility plan, an advertisement for the accessibility was released and we've received several applications. And then also an advertisement for the task team that's focused both on the street renaming and the street naming policy. Is still in search of members. And there will be an internal committee created of staff as for the same reason as the HE project in terms of how we move forward. Under the regional recreational facility, the RFP was released. We haven't had one yet. CAO Troke and Councillor York and I attended a presentation today of a few of the components, and we will be making a decision. We're making a decision in the next week or so in order for us to be able to over the recommendation of council. And then I just added this section under special projects, and I'll continue to keep you periodically up to date with all of these pieces, but there's a lot of work going on in this region that our department is involved in. And when I say this region, I mean Atlantic Canada, that our department is involved in around accessibility. So in your council package, I've just thrown together just an overview of each of these different projects. Recreation's role in supporting rural low-income families during COVID. I've talked to you a lot about that. What we're working on now is the recommendations from that, actually creating an insert that will be coming through the accessibility to as with our accessibility plan. So how specifically can we ensure that we're targeting and addressing the needs of those folks in our community. Resport project, that's through that's in partnership with Sport Nova Scotia and other government organizations in making sport more accessible. You can see something on our social media right now about a scavenger hunt. It also means pulling together all of the community sport organizations and creating a one-stop shop for registration. And it also means making sure that folks and coaches have the appropriate training or safe spaces. Unsheltered Play project is something that we started when Chief Chichetto was here. Along with the Homeless No More team around how do we address folks who are using our parks as places to seek shelter, and what is the role of recreation and what is the role of public spaces.
So that's another project that we're partnering with those groups along with public health. And then the last one is the Kentville Ravine and Katy University applied for a grant, and they were successful to hire students to help us figure out the lower access for doing some through an Indigenous-led approach, so that we make sure that we are keeping all of the efforts of representation moving forward. And that's my report.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director? Myself, please.
Thanks, Director Bedingfield. I have heard from several community members, and I'm going to address this to you just because it falls under recreation, but that's the only reason. This summer, there was a celebration for Ian Mosier at the ballpark. And Ian had put in, I think, 40 years of service to Kentville baseball and our whole programming. And a lot of that would have been way before your time as well, I think. However, citizens were disappointed that there was nobody there to represent town of Kentville, in thanking Ian for the amount of time and many number of years that he put in service. And I'm just going to throw this out there that I coached swimming and worked at the swimming pool for a long time. It was 10 years plus. And when I left, I was given a plaque by the town of Kentville thanking me for my time and so on. And, you know, I'm just thinking that maybe we should look at some of these long service or, you know, people who are, you know, giving to the town and have some form of recognition for them, other than just the volunteer awards at the, you know, the yearly volunteer awards. But I'm sure there can't be that many people who are, you know, up into the 40 years. And we don't have any representative from the town at this event to thank this gentleman. And I was not able to go myself, but I wanted to get back in time to see that ceremony. But as I was getting back, it was wrapping up. But Lindsay did a great job in videoing it, and I watched it. And I did also note that we didn't have any participant in that actual ceremony. So I don't know how we cover those bases at some point, but I'm just going to leave it with you that, you know, this is something that I think we need to do and come up with something as a council. We've had other members serve on committees for longer periods of time than just the 2 years or whatever. They've been with the town for many, many years. And that service just seems to slide by and nobody makes any recognition of it. So I just want to throw it out there that this is something that maybe your department could look at. Or
Yeah, so we worked really closely with that committee. I know Kevin and Lindsay and myself and Dave actually were very hands-on with them, and even were there for the whole event. I was there for half of it because I had to coach at the same time, ironically. And this was not a town of Kentville event. This was a Kentville office event, which we worked closely with them. And so we actually were invited to be a part of it. They had designed that with Ian's family in mind. Certainly when it's someone who's employed by the town of Kentville or on a committee with the town of Kentville, that's something that we can absolutely control. But this was a community-led event, and Ian Mosier is certainly someone who has given a lot to our community. And I was really happy that they did come together. There are other things in the work that we're supporting them with as well. But this was completely community-led, which is quite lovely to see that the baseball community came from.
exactly, I agree. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Rachel, the Unsheltered Play project. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we didn't get as far as we wanted to this summer, in part because I took a vacation. So I wasn't comfortable with my staff essentially going out and working with folks without needing their support. But the general context of the project, and again, this started as a conversation of homeless no more table. And then specifically the mental health from public health was pulled into that as well. Chief Shadow, when she was here, well, then the new one yet. And then Johnny from Open Arms was also at the table. And the idea being that, what is the role of recreation in supporting folks who are seeking shelter and homes? It's actually started a national conversation. Sure. So, these are public spaces and everybody deserves to be treated with dignity. So how do we do that through a lens of empathy? And so the context really was, okay, we have some recreation summer staff here. And often these will get a call or they'll be approached or Open Arms will be approached, and it's about moving people along, which is their job. From a recreation perspective, what happens when we engage people who are in our green spaces through recreation and learning more about them and understanding their needs, and then it's not where the conduit to connect them to other services. What happens with people who are spending their days in our parks because they have nowhere to go other than the shelter at night, whatever I engage them through. Can you also do some bird counts for us while you're here? Or what's it like when you're doing art in the park? You don't seem as threatening to other people who find you to be a threat during the day. So it's kind of like this why again. So this was going to be the start of a long-term project, and we're still moving forward on it because there's still a great need of addressing mental issues and unsheltered issues and all these things. And the fact that folks find comfort in our public spaces is quite lovely. We just want to make sure that we treat them.
Exactly. Well done. Thank you.
Further questions, Councilor Sanitary?
Thank you, Director Bedfield. I will tell you that my 4 kids love this modern merry-go-round or whatever you want to call it at the
Oh,
school.
yeah.
That's a great addition. I was going to try it too, but I want to just ask you about the skating at the rink. Do you think there'll be more times, maybe later in the day, where some of the older kids can go to? Or I think it's set up now that it's early morning.
Yeah, so we're not into the main part of the arena season yet.
Right.
This is just what is it, fall, spring, summer hockey. And then we'll get into the regular schedule. There's usually offered by 11 public skates during the day, including after school skates. We have to figure out how to navigate the wave.
Right. Yeah.
That's still up there.
Thank you.
Councilor York?
So thank you for your presentation. The Homeless No More event that they showed video, there were a lot of youth who were in like perilous or precarious housing situations. So they may not be unsheltered and in the park, but they're definitely availing themselves of recreation services. Is there a connection with Russ and Portal at this point as well? Yeah, I should say that Kelly was at the table as well. Okay, great. This is what we've learned, and I actually appreciate that comment. When Peter came in to give that presentation from UCLA and he didn't have a presentation, it's important to note that during these times when when our community members are really struggling to navigate whatever the world is throwing at them, our organizations that are supporting them are also struggling. So, the portal is also strapped for time, Peter's strapped for time, they're all doing really great work. So this is one of the things that our department has learned during this pandemic is not only do we need to focus on community, we need to focus on those folks who are supporting community in those organizations. So the portal is there, everyone shows up to the table when they have time. In the meantime, we're still moving it forward and keeping everybody up to date and just meeting people where they're at.
Perfect. All right, any other questions or comments for the director? None at all. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to our police report. Chief, are you stepping up to the podium or are we, okay, CAO Trope?
I didn't think it would be 100% fair and trouble. So, and respectfully, this is before the chief exited, and she's on vacation right now for a couple of weeks before she's officially on retirement. So she put some information together with regards to June up to the end of July. So we do our best to answer any questions if there was something there, or certainly could get the new chief to dig into it if I could not articulate.
Perfect. Are there any questions for the CAO on this matter, Councilor Maxwell?
CAO may not be able to answer this, but police commission members may be able to. I'm just wondering if our service was able to get the bikes out this summer, because contrary to previous summers, I didn't see any police officers on bikes, and I'm just wondering if that happened this year or didn't happen.
I saw them.
Okay, good. Good. Thank you.
Councilor York?
What is the assist? Assist training, ASIST. Oh, I know what that is. The only reason I know what assist is. You might be able to give a better context maybe, is because we were gonna get our staff trained for the Untitled Play project. It's really focused on mental health and suicide intervention. There's gonna be someone in cyberspace that says that better than me, but absolutely very nice. Great, I apologize. But I just went basic.
Councilor Zabia.
Thank you. Just a question, maybe CEO Troll can answer, or the police commission was, because I missed the first couple of minutes of the, when the chief retired. Did the town present her with anything, a plaque or any thanks for her? Was she presented?
Yep, she had a big plaque with all of her old badges.
That was from the police department, right? Or from the town of Kentville, I meant. I think that was from the police department. I wonder, did the town?
We have a policy
Right.
on what staff gets when they retire or leave the town.
Right,
Yeah, so that will be taken care of when she retires.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Are there any other questions? It was a really nice plaque too.
from the police department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along, engineering public works. Director Bell, please.
Good evening, Your Worship Council. Start with the Kentville Water Commission. Operationally, the last 2 months have been really quite uneventful, with the Water Commission only having relatively few maintenance issues and only a small number of water service leaks. Don't believe there are any water main breaks, but they usually come in threes when the frost is going in the ground on a Sunday or 2 a.m. or something like that. But yeah, we always know we're going to have them in early winter and early spring. I won't go on to read the next sort of paragraph of that. It'll update a lot of the members of that are on the Water Commission know about what I'm talking. I think I've already mentioned it here before about that we switched sort of strengths of chemicals at our 2 water plants as a maintenance, sort of a preventative maintenance measure to help sort of alleviate problems with their pipes clogging up, not in the main lines, but up at the plants. This chemical that we use starts to freeze at plus 14, and the water is between 5 and 10. So we switched to a weaker version of it that actually takes the freezing point down below 0. Oddly enough, I'm not a chemical engineer, so I don't know why. But so yeah, we don't expect to have nearly the maintenance issues of the pipes almost clogging from the outside and shrinking down like a tree, kind of growing backwards, choking the pipes off to a fraction of their size and causing lots of maintenance issues and pump burnouts and whatnot. Moving on to the sanitary sewer utility, our annual sanitary sewer main line cleaning and maintenance in the downtown core and other main arteries was completed last week. Started back in July and completed last week. So most of our mains are now ones that sort of have low grades and issues with gravels and things are cleaned up for the next year. We'll provide an update as well from the municipality of County of Kings. They completed the desludging process at the regional sewage treatment plant that finished in mid-August. Apparently nearly 7,000 cubic meters. That's a lot of sludge, deep water sludge. That comes out very dry to be hauled away. It was processed sort of on site, dewatered and trucked to a disposal facility in New Brunswick. This is a part of a multi-million dollar capital upgrade plan for the facility, which will see new aeration equipment added in future fiscal years and improve performance and efficiency of the facility, and hopefully less odor. Public Works, July, the order was placed for a new cat wheel loader. This will be a capital equipment purchase, and as a town-owned piece of equipment, it will allow us to keep it longer as opposed to a lease and better protect it from the harsh environments it's exposed to with the salt. We expect delivery of the new loader in October. time to be outfitted for winter snow removal. And I know that it did come in low budget, so it was sort of in line with that. Capital investment. Under projects, for subdivision upgrades. Councilor Maxwell mentioned, residents seem to be, thrilled that the way things are going. It has been disruptive to them up there, but the contractor in Valley Construction is really working well with the residents, making sure they're informed and taken care of. And I would estimate about 65% complete, certainly of the pipe work. It looks like it's less than that because of the state of gravel roads and things really not coming together until they start pouring curbs and paving streets. But I'd say 2/3 of the pipe has been replaced, and it's progressing pretty steady. So we're still on track to be substantially complete by the end of October, which was what was in the contract. Several other small capital projects are nearing completion, including stormwater upgrades at several locations throughout town and repairs to a section of the dike and storm sewer outlet along the south side of the Wallace River dike near Shannon's. The Centennial Arena will receive a new sewer lateral to replace the aging and often troublesome sewer pumping station, eliminating the dependency on both pumps and power. So with the extension of River Street a number of years ago, we now have a better option for the arena. There's no sewer out in front of the arena on Webster Street. Never was a need to have sewer there, but with River Street being completed through and the station that's been installed there, we can eliminate the one behind the arena, which always seemed to fail, of course, on a Sunday night as well. So that'll be a big help for parks and maintenance staff. And that is my report.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director with regards to this report? All right, looks like they're letting you off easy tonight,
yeah.
Director Bell.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, see you.
So in all reports, I typically will start off with the provincial health order. And of course, we're in phase 4 of reopening plan from the province. Phase 5 was anticipated potentially as early as September 15th, but obviously based on numbers today and numbers of vaccinations will determine whether we get there or not. And depending upon whatever those orders are, continue to work with that as our staff and in any of the meeting environments. With regards to budget, grant application review is going to be done by council on September 20th. If any of council needs any additional information or follow-up, please reach out. The town staff and myself continue to try to leverage all of the monies within our budgets by applying for any grants that may be available. We're going to have a bit of a conversation a little bit later tonight about some of the major grants that we anticipate will be coming down. And obviously, if there's any major savings to be had, these will be items that will be brought back to council for discussion. I also wanted to mention to council, although Hurricane Dorian was some time ago, the province has reached out with regards to the claims. I understand that there's a number of municipal units who had submitted claims during Dorian, and there are some new folks who are now processing this on the provincial side. So they reached out. We've started some conversations around what that potentially would look like for the town of Kentville as they work through that. Accessibility was already touched on. The IMSA review continued throughout the summer till we hit the end of July, and there was a bit of a break around that work. You're going to hear a little bit around the emergency measures organization piece tonight, but we are looking to have mayors and ward reconvene later this month to continue on with some of the work there as well. Internally, we've been doing a policy review. Some of this has to do with housekeeping of some old policies and situations where some policies may want to be combined together. The plan is to bring this to council in as we work through this in October. Some of these are modernizations of some old policies that exist here in the book. So we'll be bringing that forward. There's quite a bit of work has been done by Jennifer West and myself on that. So looking forward to trying to get that moving. Police chief position will be coming here tonight. Mentoring Plus, they've done a bit of a restart with a new employee and they're hoping to come in and give council an update in October, November. And then not as many meetings throughout the month of August as I had a chance to take a couple of weeks vacation and get some kids off to school. So that's my report today.
All right, thank you very much, Seal. Are there any questions, Councillor Zaidi?
Thank you, CEO Troke. I'm just wondering if you can tell me what, I guess what happened with the Kentville Historical Society. I know you and I have discussed this a few times and I think back in May and from what I understand, nothing was done at all. Or nothing that whatever you'd come up with, I think we discussed in July, you said you were gonna look at their lease and see which roles we were responsible for and I'm not sure what happened.
So I've been over to meet again, I've
Right.
dropped over, but also I've been reporting through the members.
Right,
So we had one of our staff go over and address some of the quick fixes for them. There's a longer term fix needs to be done around some of the roof work. That's gonna be a capital piece that's gonna have to come back here.
right,
So of the things that they came to myself and Director Bell with, we've either directly addressed them,
okay,
or we've talked to them about this is gonna have to be a capital item. The only thing that's outstanding on their list right now is there's some caulking around the windows and there's a garbage can.
I mean, I might have the wrong information. I was under the impression that nothing's been done yet.
I've had a conversation with the member who reached out to me.
Yeah,
I've subsequently dropped over and talked to one of the staff people, persons who were working there. And they walked through the items with me personally, and if there's something in addition to that that they
Right.
need, they just need to
do
reach out.
you know what has been done so far?
Yeah, so I understand there was some work that had to be done with drainage around, we'll call it the gutters.
Yeah,
There was some minor board repair work that needed to be done. There was a roof assessment done,
Mhm.
and it's gonna need to be some replacement.
right,
And then essentially there's some caulking around the windows and a garbage can request,
Mhm.
and those two are outstanding. So those are what they came to me for, and
okay.
like I said, we're gonna move through those items.
Yeah, I was talking
basically.
to one of them the other day and from what I understood, nothing was done. I think they had said, you mentioned that the garbage can was hard to source or,
So the issue with, not so much that it's hard to source, that putting the garbage can there, then it's essentially another item that sometimes, depending on how you put them in places, they become more of a burden for the organization.
right,
So what we said is we want to find a garbage can, obviously they're robust enough to deal with what they need, and then we get it on our regular pickup. So again, I've been having a conversation specifically with Mr. Pearl.
yeah,
But also I've dropped over, talked to one of the staff folks there, and so if somebody is not happy with it, that hasn't been communicated to me.
okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Councillor.
Thank you. I was gonna mention also Historical Society, because where I volunteer there.
Yep.
I kind of always do a walk around and I sent you a note and you were project over there for me. I really do appreciate that, because it just makes to know that voices are.
Yeah.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, CEO. I've observed, and it's been pointed out to me, that the wood tops on our gateway signs are losing their stain. And they're basically look like just a piece of wood on top. And I'm wondering if they came to us, or whether we put those on there as decoration, or, you know, and are they going to be taken care of? Because they kind of look shabby right now.
So these are the subdivision signs?
The new gateway signs,
The blue ones
the
like
blue ones with the wood on top. So there's one up by Kings Tech, there's one up on West End, there's one down by East Hollow. They basically lost their shine,
Okay.
and they're looking pretty shabby. It would be better without them or fixed up.
I have to take a look at it. Thank you.
Yeah. One other question I
Sure.
had. Yes, the community grants review September 20th that we're doing.
Yes.
But is that community grants? It doesn't say so on here, but I'm assuming it's the community grants that we do every year.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is there anything further from the CEO? Nothing further. All right then, moving along. If we could have a motion to accept the staff reports as presented, please. Councillor York and Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that staff reports be accepted as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed, the motion is carried. Thank you. We have no unfinished business, and we have one piece of correspondence. It is with regards to volunteer fire and search and rescue support. And I had a phone call. Thank you very much, staff. We'll see you at the next CAC meeting, if not before. This letter came from the Scotchtown Volunteer Fire Department. Michael Viva called me in the month of July. And what he is doing is he has been lobbying government to get the provincial government to pay for firefighter and search and rescue volunteers' funerals. And it's if a person serves for 5 years as a volunteer firefighter or search and rescue volunteer, they become eligible for this free funeral. And but they only get the free funeral if they're still serving in a fire department. And so he's been lobbying government, and basically government has come back to him and said, if you can get communities on side with this idea, we will look at it further. But they saw it as a way of recruiting people into the volunteer fire service. And anyway, it's a matter of writing a letter of support. As you see, this one was written to the previous government. But with your blessing and support, I can write a letter and saying that we support this idea. They're not asking for any funding from municipalities. This would be purely a provincial government fund set up for volunteer firefighters and search and rescue personnel. So is there anyone opposed to supporting this and writing a letter?
I have a question.
Sure.
Are they surmising what that pot of money?
He had none of those details because I was a little confused because I thought he was looking for the municipalities.
That's how I interpreted
it. To pay for it. And he said, no, he said, this is not, we want this to be at provincial level. And it's a way of encouraging people to join the departments.
So that their funerals can be paid for.
I know it sounds a little crass when you say it out loud.
Yes, it's different.
But yeah, I think they are really looking for different ways to attract.
Okay.
And as well, volunteers who typically serve in fire departments are longstanding volunteers.
Sure.
And yeah, so anyway, it's a letter of support and no municipal funding. That was very clear. All right, new business. So we have our first piece of new business is the Kentville Business Community Agreement, and you've been provided with a copy of the updated agreement. And CEO Trope, if you could give us a little walkthrough on this, please.
Sure. So first, as council will recall, when the budget was passed this year with regards to the Kentville Development Corporation, there was a number of questions around things like policies and processes for approving the work that they do. And so as an organization, they came back to me with a lot of updates on their documentation, how they were doing what they do, what their structure was, and some of the events that they had planned for the year. So in essence, this is a one-year agreement, takes us to March 31st of this year, is very specifically tied to the $88,000 budget that was approved by council. And that the additional funding for special projects are pieces that they would need to bring in as information for council before they would be approved. So this is kind of putting the meat around the $88,000 budget and takes us to the end of this year. And is very specific. This has been reviewed by our solicitor with regards to making sure from a liability perspective and so on that everything is appropriate. So if there's anything specific that folks would like to talk about, I'd be happy to go from there. Also, I guess part of this would lead us then to a conversation on the go forward. At this time, wouldn't have to be had, but before obviously getting into next year's budget request, we would want to look at, do we want to continue to do one-year agreements? Would we want to do a multi-year agreement and so on, just as part of that conversation?
All right, thank you, CAO Troke, for that recommendation. So our motion would be that CAC recommends approval to council at the September 27th council meeting of the KDCL KBC funding contribution agreement, which expires on 31st of March 2022. Someone can move that.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. And second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Zabian? It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to council at the September 27th council meeting of the KDCL KBC funding contribution agreement, which expires on the 31st of March 2022. Discussion? Councilor Zabian?
Thank you. So I guess I'm confused. We would have given them half of this money in April. So we haven't given them any money yet.
So yes, some money has flowed because it was an approved budget.
Right.
And they did supply the information that we asked for.
Okay.
But the formalization of the contract lets us kind of get to the end of the year.
Mhm.
Part of that was also that these types of agreements, some cases so my experience, some councils would say, CAO, go negotiate it. Others, they'll say, bring it back just so council can have a look at it. And I know specifically there was the request to bring it back. So I wanted to make sure before we would disperse the rest of the money, it is an approved budget. But what happens here is it puts more rigor around it. And also the request that was made around what are the policies and so on, they did bring all that information back so that I was aware of how they were trying to do it.
So we've given them 44,000 so far, and this is the second half. I'm just trying to figure out why we weren't presented this in April or March. I guess have a little discussion around it. And correct me if I'm wrong, I've never seen them come in and present before. Don't they usually come in and kind of give a synopsis of their year and what their plans are for the coming year? Isn't that usually the protocol?
Yes, it has
Yeah.
been, but with COVID, it did not occur.
What do you mean with COVID?
Well,
They didn't need the money, or you mean they didn't present?
no, they didn't present.
They couldn't have presented on Zoom, or?
If I could, I believe so. When I came, there was an ask was made for a
Mhm.
budget. There was a lesser number than that was approved by council.
Okay.
There was a series of questions were asked by council around policies, which then they
Mhm.
supplied that information. And basically with the intent that the documents we received would support the $88,000 budget that was presented. And that some of the monies would go out the door to allow the year to start. And then this agreement would come back allowing us to take it to the end of the year. Council obviously can choose to do this 1 year at a time. What I can say to you is that when this budget comes up and I would have a year under my belt, I'd be in a position to bring that into council with the budget. So then it could be signed off at the same time. In this place, we're kind of playing some catch up. But certainly, all of the things that we have requested from them around details they've supplied.
I mean, I'm not putting it on you. I'm definitely not saying that they haven't contributed. I mean, I take value in what they've done. I'd like to see these in advance before you pass out $100,000 or 88 or whatever the number is. Some kind of presentation, just to kind of see where it's going, what their plans are, rather than hear about it after the fact. And yeah, thank you.
Councilor York?
Forgive me if I'm confused. We had a presentation from KBC over one of our Zoom meetings in a council session.
Paul Dixon presented, and that's when he wanted to change the whole plan. And we
Okay.
wanted more funding, and we said,
Right, okay.
hold the boat.
In the fall.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, so it did occur. It's just that we didn't like what they were presenting, and
Right.
sent it back.
Because I remember they said,
Yes.
sorry, okay, so I'm
Yes.
not imagining
No,
things
no, you
entirely.
are,
Okay.
you are. Yes, yes,
That is probably-
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so we were presented, just that we didn't like it, sent it back, but we were coming into budget season. And we were doing the transition between our interim CAO and our new CAO and getting budget. And we never had them come back.
But I don't
In between?
remember, and I could be wrong. I don't remember if they really presented. I think it was more or less on the parking lot. Remember, they wanted to purchase property and that.
No, that was another,
Presentation? Mhm.
another presentation. They also wanted more money. That was the first presentation. They wanted more money from us.
Right, I just would have been, it would be nice as a group, maybe next year to kind of hammer down the amount that we're gonna, as a town, give them, whether it's 88 or 86 or, that'd be a nice discussion to have moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor or Deputy Mayor.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. But before budget, we did have the conversation and substantiated the amount of money that we were going to grant them. And then the agreement was coming back to work out some of the details, which is a segue into what I was going to ask. The additional 25,000 for the special projects, and I'm trying to, I read through it a couple of days ago and I can't find it now. But in order to advance that 25,000, do they have to come back to us each time with respect to the special project that they want to engage in?
It was anticipated that, so typically with this kind of thing, you look at a threshold of probably like a $5,000 request. So if it were something that were minor or outside the budget, then certainly we could look at including that in amongst the staff report or something rather than them coming back.
Right,
But
okay.
if we were talking about, larger increments, if there was a special piece that was needed, then yes, we would normally ask that as a formal request. And what they could do is ask the CAO and then I could bring it into council if we didn't
Right.
want to do it as a presentation.
Right,
But that pot very specifically was segregated out as something that
okay.
if you have something you need, we go, that there's a process in place that you could do that.
And presumably there wouldn't really be any surprises because where I sit ex officio on that board,
You got it.
I'd be bringing back the minutes every month anyway. Okay, thank you very much.
Is there anything? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I'm just looking at section 3.2 E. And it talks about KDCL agreeing to permit a member of council to be determined by the CAO to attend regular board meetings. We are in the process, I believe, of updating our committees of council policy. But we haven't finalized that yet. We had red lines now, but we haven't finalized it. And I have a problem with this being a committee of council that gets unilaterally decided by the CAO and doesn't come to council for anybody to show who would like to show interest to be on that committee. And so I have a problem with that setup right there. I think if it's a committee of council, then it should be open to all members of council and to show interest, and we do a vote and so on. I don't know if we can take that out and just put simply will be determined by the committee's policy, committees of council policy, and as we finalize that.
Theo?
Thank you. So yes, so what that should say is the CAO gets direction from council on.
Okay.
So, and part of what happened is, this was early in the summer, we had a conversation as there was an ex officio member went on. And so you're absolutely right, that shouldn't be CAO.
Right, and we have one person on council representing council on KDC. Is that correct? Because Councillor York, I think you have mentioned you're on the events committee and you said it was part of your duties as a councillor, but it really isn't. You're a volunteer with them.
Sure,
You're
yeah.
a volunteer,
Yeah.
and Councillor Huntley is a volunteer with Kentville Historical Society. And when I was volunteering with Kentville Historical Society, I was called into a challenge on conflict of interest several times when votes came up to deal with Kentville Historical Society and so on. Now, I didn't see that I had a conflict of interest, but I think we should clear up right now for Councillor York and Councillor Huntley where they stand on votes for KDCL and Kentville Historical Society, because if they're volunteering with those organizations and those organizations are coming to council for money, then is this a conflict of interest? As I was told, and many times, that I should check my conflict of interest.
If I may.
Councillor York?
That's a great point, and perhaps I misspoke or overinflated the relationship of council to that position. I am a counselor on that events committee, but it is not, to your point, a committee of council. And that committee doesn't deal with any budget for the meetings that I attend. I do the boots on the ground meetings, so there would be no financial complication.
But
Or-
that's what I was.
But yeah,
For
yes.
Kentville Historical, I wasn't dealing with financial matters either. I was just volunteering with the organization.
So you understand that there's no, like,
Oh, I
but
know
it's good to
there's no-
have it clarified and in writing somewhere, for sure,
Yeah, for sure. I understand that. I think we need to have a clarification for both these counselors on where they stand.
CAO will take care of that. He's making notes.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the rewording of that statement would be, instead of currently it reads to be determined by the CAO, it would read to be determined by the policy.
Perfect.
And I don't think that term would negate approving this document this evening, CAO.
No, this is, if I could, this is, once council approves, then we'll go forward for signatory, so that document can be changed whenever's needed.
All right, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, worship. So just to get back to the wording again, and I'm going back to when not I was elected to sit ex officio on that committee, but the position was to sit ex officio on the committee. And I think I'm correct when I say that it was the deputy mayor, it wasn't Councillor Savage that was appointed, it was the deputy mayor, because I remember us having that conversation that whomever is the deputy mayor at the time would sit ex officio on that committee.
I think we'd have to go back to the minutes. I don't recall it that way. To look that up, just make that clear.
Okay, CAO's taking notes on that, and we'll bring that.
Because I think it came to council as a Deputy Mayor Savage is going to, be the representative for council on KDC, and we voted on it. There was no
Yes,
discussion.
that's why I'm saying I'm not clear on what it was at the time.
I think it's
Thank you.
because you were the deputy mayor. That was your title at the time.
That's what I'm saying.
But if you weren't deputy mayor, there would be no reason for you to step away because we've also put you on that committee.
I think the intent is that it would be the deputy mayor, so that it would change once a year, regardless of who is deputy mayor. So it wouldn't be a member of council, it would be the deputy mayor's job. So if we can review that. Yes, Council Maxwell.
Yes, please. I would like to have that reviewed because I think if it is a committee of council, then it shouldn't be designated one person. It should be open to all councillors who would like to be part of that. It's no different than sitting on KCA, PTA. It's no different than sitting on any other committee that we have.
Right.
Valley Waste or whatever it is.
And we acknowledge.
So
Yes.
clarification around that, is it a committee of council?
That
I'm not,
Well, if could, it's
Okay.
ex officio, you have no
Right, of
capacity
course,
on it. I think the intent was that it was a start of a reporting relationship.
right, okay.
The contract need to be finalized, and having
Right,
somebody
okay.
working with the group was a way to share information. I think council is fully in a position where they may choose to make it a permanent committee, depending upon coming out of this year where they would go, or open it up for everybody. Those are all decisions.
exactly.
But,
Councilor Xavier.
yeah, same, thank you, but currently the policy doesn't say deputy mayor, or it does say.
I don't think it's in the policy, as Councilor Maxwell has pointed out.
Okay.
So it was a memorandum recommendation from my desk to
Right.
council.
Right, I
That
remember
we fill
asking.
this position, because we've always had a member of staff on there, a community development person, but a member of staff should not be in a position such that they're sitting there and we've got an entire board making financial decisions based on money that we have to approve. So that was the big issue that came out of this. So CAO, you have
Homework.
your notes, your
Yeah.
homework on that,
Okay.
and you will report back to us. And if we could put that to unfinished business at our council meeting? So we still have a motion on the table if there's no further discussion on this matter. And the question is on recommendation of approval from CAC to council at the September 28 council meeting of the KDCL-KBC funding contribution agreement, which expires on the 31st of March, 2022. And voting is now open. And voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, our next item of new business is with regards to the Kentville Police Chief and Commissioner Gerard, can I hand this over to you?
Thank you, Your Worship. On October 6, 2021, Chief Giacchetto will be retiring from Kentville Police after 5 years of service. Advertisements for her replacement were placed with the Maritime and National Policing Associations. Applications were accepted until June 11th. 14 applications were received. 4 individuals were invited to the first round of interviews on July 21st. James Butler, Kentville Police, Mark Kane, Annapolis, Paula Ducier, Esteban, and Doug Paulson, Dryden. The top candidate, Jim Butler, returned for an additional interview on July 27th. Mr. Butler provided references which proved satisfactory. Jim Butler started his policing career as a term constable with the town of Kentville in 1991. In 1992, he was hired by the city of Halifax as a constable, progressing to sergeant in 2001, staff sergeant in 2005. There, he was in charge of general and specialized investigations. In 2015, he was made inspector of information management, and in 2017, inspector of operational support. In 2019, Mr. Butler was made superintendent of the Halifax Criminal Investigation Unit, and in April 2020, deputy chief. In December 2020, he retired from HRM policing. Late in December 2020, he returned to Kentville as a constable, working in uniform on the town's grassroots policing work. Chief Giacchetto recommends Mr. Butler for this position, where the Police Act states the chief officer of municipal policing shall be appointed by council. Chapter 82, the town of Kentville bylaw states the hiring and appointment of a chief of police shall be made by the council. It is a recommendation of the Kentville Police Commission to Kentville's town council that Jim Butler be offered a 3-year term contract as the new chief of police for the town of Kentville. I so move.
Thank you. Councilor George. Okay, so the CAC recommends to council the appointment of Mr. James Butler as chief of Kentville Police Service on a 3-year contract. Do you have an end date, or is it fiscal?
Yeah, it would know, so it would be effective. Chief Giacchetto would retire on October 1st, and then effectively would be actually October 6th. Mr. Butler would be acting until sworn in at the October CAC.
Okay, so just to have his effective date would be October 7th or 6th?
6th. Actually, his effective date would be when he would be sworn in, which would be at the CAC meeting. That would be his official start date.
Okay,
He would be acting in the
so
capacity.
that's the 4th, is that the 14th or 15th? 13th of October. Okay, that's just to get the
Yeah.
dates in here. So the motion would read that CAC recommends to council the appointment of Mr. James Butler as the chief officer of the Kentville Police Services on a 3-year contract effective October 13th, 2021, moved by Councillor Gerard. Second? Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to council the appointment of Mr. James Butler as chief officer of the Kentville Police Service on a 3-year contract effective October 13th, 2021. Is there any discussion on this matter or questions for the chair of the Police Commission? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to recommend to council the appointment of Mr. James Butler as the Chief Officer of the Kentville Police Service on a 3-year contract effective October 13th, 2021. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. All right, our next piece of business is the Investment Advisory Committee extension of request for proposals. And I would ask the Investment Advisory Committee Chair to step us through this request, please.
Thank you, Worship. So the subject is the Investment Advisory Committee extension of service. The Investment Advisory Committee is appointed by council to monitor the investment portfolio and investment activities for the funds invested from the sale of the Kentville Electric Commission. The Investment Committee uses the services of a professional investment manager advisory approved by council to a 4-year term reviewed annually. The current investment manager has completed their 4-year term. However, the committee is proposing an extension to their service by 1 year. The committee has been working on updating the investment policy, the G26 perpetual fund investment policy, which will be reviewed and approved by the Provincial Department of Municipal Affairs. The draft policy was submitted to the government prior to the election, and now with the new provincial minister and staff, there is a delay in moving this policy forward. So no policy implications, no budget implications, no attachments. The recommendation is that council extend the term of the existing investment advisor by 1 year until November 2022. I so move.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councilor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to council to extend the current investment manager contract by 1 year to expire in November of 2022. Is there any discussion on this matter or questions for the chair of the investment committee? Councilor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Just curious, so the reason we're extending is just we're waiting for this policy to get through the provincial and then, okay, yeah, thank you.
Anything further? Any further
I
discussion?
could expand a little bit more if you want me to. There's some changes in the investment policy statement, obviously, that have to be signed off by the minister, the revisions that have to be signed off. And some of those are material changes that our investment advisor has been materially, obviously, involved in. And to move away from that in the midst of,
Yeah,
so that's why.
thank you.
Councilor Maxwell.
Will those changes that you're looking at come to council? So will we be informed on what those changes are that are being looked at by municipal affairs?
They already did.
You already did? Okay, thank you.
We've already approved
The
that,
last time.
that policy.
It had to be before it could go before the minister.
Okay.
Sign off on the council. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to recommend approval to council to extend the current investment manager contract by 1 year to expire in November of 2022. Voting is now open.
It's up to 6 again there, Jennifer.
I think it should still work though.
Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, our next piece of business is with regards to the Kings Regional Emergency Management Organization Intermunicipal Service Agreement. So it's an IMSA that is coming before you, and CEO Trope, did you want to give us the details on this?
Sure thing. So as folks are aware, with a lot of the work that's been going on around the IMSA, and I'm sure everybody here at different times has received information from Dan Stovall and all the great work he's doing under the town of Wolfville on behalf of all the parties. One of the things that, as part of this process, is Mr. Stovall has been creating manuals, documents, processes for anyone who would have to come behind him to be able to do exactly what he's doing. And so as part of that work, obviously, not just because of Mr. Stovall, but also because of the work that's there, it made a lot of sense for us to think about this as kind of that host unit opportunity for the town of Wolfville to essentially host this and support the other work that's going on with Kings, Berwick, Kentville, and Wolfville. And so this essentially is the formalization of that. So essentially the business that you see going on now will continue to go smoothly. And it's one of those pieces that this, like everything else, obviously has an opportunity to be regularly reviewed because that's part of where we want to go with these. But this is the formalization of REMO falling under its own intermunicipal agreement with the exact same cost sharing formula that we've been using to date. So there are no changes financially here. There are no changes policy wise. This is the formalization of something that's kind of been a little more generic, and we're putting it into an envelope to kind of make it clear for all the parties what it means. So we're bringing that here tonight for that purpose.
Thank you, CAO, for that recommendation, and that CAC recommends approval to council to enter an intermunicipal service agreement, an IMSA, with the town of Berwick and Wolfville and the municipality of the County of Kings for the provision of regional emergency management organization services, and further to approve allocation of funds based on the REMO sharing formula. Kentville's share represents 15% of the current $80,000 REMO budget. If someone could move that, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Okay, Deputy Mayor. Second, Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to town council to enter an intermunicipal service agreement, IMSA, with the town of Berwick and Wolfville and the municipality of the County of Kings for the provision of regional emergency management organization services, and further to approve allocation of funds based on the REMO sharing formula. Kentville's share represents 15% of the current $80,000 REMO budget. Is there any discussion on this matter or questions for the CAO? No questions? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to recommend approval to council to enter an intermunicipal service agreement, IMSA, with the town of Berwick and Wolfville and the municipality of the County of Kings for the provision of regional emergency management organization services, and further to approve allocation of the funds based on the REMO sharing formula. Kentville's share represents 15% of the current $80,000 REMO budget. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. All right, our next piece of business is with regards to a capital grant request for infrastructure. CAO, could you tell us a little bit about this recommendation?
Sure thing. So essentially what we normally get in the fall is the province would normally come out with a call for, there's a federal provincial initiative called Investing in Capital Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP is the acronym. Essentially, this is a cost shared program where the province receives the information. If the province approves it, there's a matching mechanism with the federal government. And this is work that's normally done by municipalities, typically in the way of roads, sidewalks, major infrastructure. One of the things that has been on our work plan is looking at the whole idea of a Donald Hill, or called a Kentville connector. Essentially, and you see in your briefing note here, a roughed in, although this is not a perfect rendering, this is a roughed in of the water line that essentially runs through the woods now. So you basically, if this is grubbed, you would have essentially the equivalent of what would be a construction access point into this area. The reason that I'm bringing this forward is that as part of the ICIP grants, there's ways in which you can apply and phase it in. So A, you can do the technical work. What would it cost? What would be needed? B, you could also look at then your tender documents, and then C, ultimately construction. This is a big project, and this is not me here tonight asking council for approval around this, but it is about, I think we're at that place on whether we increase some of our own internal capacity under Director Bell, or we third party that we're at a point where we can start articulating not just the cost, but the layering that's needed in order to make something like this come to council for consideration. And so this is that first step where, if council were to approve, I would put together the documents along with Director Bell, submit it to the province, and see if there is some appetite for us to at least get the technical work done so we could bring this back to council to have a wholesome conversation around, is the town interested in looking at this second east-west connector within town? So the request is about approval to submit, to apply for the grant work, to, at least in principle, to start that grant work that would let us to get the technical information, bring it back to council, and then essentially stage gate if there's appetite to continue moving it forward.
Thank you very much for that recommendation, CAO. And a motion would read that CAC recommend to council approval in principle for staff to submit a proposal request to the expected call for submissions by the province. If someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And a seconder? Second. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to council approval in principle for staff to submit a proposal request to the expected call for submission by the province. Discussion. Deputy Mayor?
May I direct to?
Certainly, please.
Do we have any sense of what kind of capacity this would give us? Okay.
Yes,
it's fine.
So I guess first, the capacity in doing something like this, ironically, I think the person in the past he would have gone out to as a third party is working for us.
Right.
However, if we were asking him to do this work, then there's going to need to be somebody to take over a lot of those projects. So, from a capacity perspective, if we did it in-house, we need another resource. And we've been having that conversation, around all of the things that we have going on. But even if you were to, third party that, it would be not so much that the route would need a lot of work. It's the other intangibles. So for example, right now, there's a lot of water management could happen in the upper part, if we'll call it the town, that would need to be drawn up and worked through. This is probably, if you're talking as a connector, it would be much more significant than what a traditional road in Kentville would look like. It would open up a substantive amount of both commercial and residential development opportunities. And obviously from a perspective of water and sewer, there would be a lot of consideration for things like pumping stations. So the technical resource, the costing of that, and the timing of that. All of those things then at least would allow council to have a conversation. What are we talking about? What would the financial, economic, and social impacts be for the town? But there's an entire component here, I think, around things like managing water. And I truly mean this from both storm and then post-storm water situations that we right now don't know what we don't know. And so getting that information would certainly help us. And those would be the type of things then we could come back to council, have that conversation, and financially have that conversation.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Further to the CEO, Councilor Maxwell.
I'd like to direct to the CA.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is the time, but there were just a couple of things that I was concerned about with looking at this. And I think it's good. I think it's something that we need to do is get that connector through. But we have some streets in this town that are in pretty poor shape. And notably, I'm thinking about Chester Avenue off of Klondike. And there's a few others. And I'm wondering if doing something like this means we're not going to be able to get to those types of projects sooner. That's one concern. And the other concern is when I look at this proposal, it's going through green space there, which is, I'm assuming that's the gorge. And we're going to impact a major recreation facility that we have in town that's being used not just here, but nationally as well. And so I have two concerns with that, and I don't know if you can address those now or not, but.
So first of all, thank you. Yes, my experience with this is typically a major project like this, especially if you were connected through streets or to the ends of streets, it gives you that opportunity to do an and. So if we could get, you know, if we were contributing 10, 20, 30% to something, you get 70 or 80, 90 cent dollars, gives you an opportunity to think about how those would all connect and deal with the infrastructure. I don't think this is an and or at this moment in time. This is, let's understand, and I'll be honest, this is a path that's through the woods that a water line goes through. That's my dotted line. But by no means at the end of the day would that necessarily be. In fact, I know some of the grades, even when you think about Prospect and Chester, some of the grades there would be such that you may not ever be able to connect something through. And so again, not an expert, purely be one of those things that we could figure out what an expert would recommend, what it would cost, how to do it. But then when it comes to those other pieces, at this point in time, no, it's not considered to be something that would be given up at the expense of another. This is one of those pieces that, you know, would we want to look at something that's been discussed and on the books for a long time as a major project that would be happening in tandem with the other things that we want to have going on. And my suspicion is we'd be able to, especially if you connected to or through other locations, you might be able to take some of that work and tie it into the project, which would be a bonus.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions for the CEO? All right, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to recommend to council approval in principle for staff to submit a proposal request to the expected call for submissions by the province. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. All right, our next piece of business is with regards to National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, designated for September the 30th. CAO, did you want to take this one?
Sure. So first, we started putting this document together when the federal government had made their announcement. And so we weren't at that moment quite sure where the province stood on it, but obviously this is now a federal and provincial holiday, but we wanted to bring to council the opportunity to support the idea of September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and that the town would mark 2021 is the first year that this day will be marked in Canada, and it's recommended that the town of Kentville will honor First Nations, Inuit, Métis survivors and their families and communities on this day henceforth. I would like to also add that our recreation team is planning some events in connection with the First Nations community on this day, and that obviously more details will come out around that. But this is essentially an opportunity to recognize the date, recognize the fact that the First Nations community is working its way through obviously some significant events that have happened and come to light recently.
Thank you, CAO. So our motion would be that CAC recommend approval to council that the town of Kentville will honor First Nations, Inuit, and Métis survivors and their families and communities on September 30th as a recognized holiday for the town. So you can move that, please. Thank you. Councilor Xavier. Councilor Huntley, I've got you for the second. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to council that the town of Kentville will honor First Nations, Inuit, and Métis survivors and their families and communities on September 30th as a recognized holiday for the town. Is there any discussion on this or questions for the CAO? Councilor York.
Okay, can I address the CEO? Are we doing anything to mark Treaty Day on October 1st as well?
I understand, yes. I don't have all the details.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to recommend to council approval that the town of Kentville will honor First Nations, Inuit, and Métis survivors and their families and communities on September 30th as a recognized holiday for the town. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And that motion is carried. Our next piece of business is to advise you that I will be attending the Annapolis Valley MIT Regional Economic Acceleration Program Conference in Halifax at the end of the month, and I am unavailable for the council meeting. Deputy Mayor Savage will be the meeting chair at the September 27th meeting. All right, we now have confidential land matters which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda items. We will not be returning to Facebook Live for adjournment of this meeting. So if we could have a motion to move into the closed session. Councillor York and Councillor Huntley, thank you. And
We have public comments or?
we have a motion on the floor.
Question, discussion.
Your question?
I believe we forgot to, or I didn't take note to approve the minutes, did we, at the beginning of the meeting?
Yeah.
We did, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't take note of that, so I'm sorry.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. We can suspend the motion. Councillor or Jennifer, did you have, was there public comments?
Yes, there were a number of emails that I received during the meeting. I'll give very brief description. Some of them are quite long. So Sharon Kehoe had concerns about the lack of support for staff regarding a toxic work environment. Kim Kehoe and Patricia Williamson had concerns about the use of public funds spent on legal actions. Another resident expressed disappointment that council could not add allegations about the mayor at tonight's meeting. And there was a question from a resident as to why the mayor was able to vote on the agenda item about her and why this was not considered a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for clarity, do we ever answer the public comments? I know sometimes in the past, I remember when there was the flood on Condon Avenue, I know council entertained conversation with people. I'm just wondering, how do you decide when to answer public comment? How do you decide when to engage them or not?
CEO.
So what we have right now is a process because of COVID-19.
Right.
And so normally what would happen, and I don't have a long history in Kentville, so my experience though, most municipal units, what happens is if an item is on the agenda, the public usually is asked to come in and at the end of the meeting, have an opportunity to speak to it. And then typically there's follow-up might come from that. So that would be the normal process. Items that are on the agenda would entertain questions. And sometimes there would be some follow-up, but typically it'd be more an opportunity for to come to council, and council would then subsequently have follow-up with people. So that would be in the normal process. Again, I can't speak specifically to Kentville pre-COVID, but I think right now what you have is a good way to still receive that. Obviously, councillors get the majority of that feedback on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Is there any further public comments?
That's all. Thank you.
All right. We'll move back to the business at hand. The council has a land matter which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into that closed session. It has been moved and seconded moved by Councillor York, seconded by Councillor Huntley, that council move into the closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into a closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. And the time is 8:09.